David Roches is an Associate Professor at the Near East South Asia Centre at the National Defence University. Joins us live now from Washington, D.C. David, welcome. What do you say? Is Ukraine's President Zelensky correct when he blames Europe over, and the West in fact, over its inaction, which he says has led to this incursion on Polish territory by the Russian drones?
I think that is a factor in it, and he's not the only person who says it. I mean, one of the more controversial elements of Vice President Vance's speech at the Munich Security Conference in the heart of Europe was where he told the Europeans in rather undiplomatic language that you have neglected your defense for too long, and now Russia is taking advantage of that. So I think that the consensus is pretty much solid here that decades of European underinvestment in defense are now created a vulnerability.
What's your assessment of what Moscow was doing here when it sent these drones over the Polish border?
So I think that at the tactical level, we, as early as July, there were recoveries of drones on the Ukrainian battlefield that had Polish SIM cards in it. So it seems as though what they were doing was running an exercise to see how they would be able to use drones over Poland, guided by Poland's cellular telephone network. They've had some success in doing this in Ukraine until it was modified. At the strategic level, the staple of Russia from day one has been to threaten to bring the war west if the Western allies support Ukraine. So the Russians have continually conducted nuclear weapons drills to, try to intimidate it. Some Russian politicians have directly threatened, have said, if we get Taurus missiles fired at Russian troops, we will fire missiles at Berlin. I think this is strategically part of that area to try to get to cleave European support for Ukraine.
And Poland's, of course, saying this is a provocation more dangerous than ever before. I mean, just how concerned should Poles and Europeans be about this escalation?
Very concerned. This is serious. This is, in many ways, the nearest closest in history analog was the Russian overflight of Turkey from Syria a few years ago, where the Turkish Air Force shot down Russian jets. But that was an overflight of what was an isthmus of Turkish territory that kind of extended into Syria. This was a concentrated, seemingly planned attack that went as far west as Lodz, that seems to have been directed along vital land corridors that would be necessary for defense, air defense installations, air bases, and population centers. So it's hard to see this as anything other than a full-on precursor for a aerial attack or an invasion.
And as our correspondent Victoria was saying there in her package, she was saying that the threats of further sanctions clearly haven't worked to deter Moscow. I mean, the arming Ukraine hasn't worked either, she says. So what does need to happen here?
Well, what I would argue is that all of these have not been done in a sufficient scale. So it's clear that arming Ukraine the way we have been doing it, which for most of the last administration was the Ukrainians asked for something, we tell them no for about a month, and we finally give it to them. That is not effective. We haven't seen a full-hearted support and provision of material in levels that will allow Ukraine to win. Similarly, with the sanctions, some Russian assets have been sequestered, but things, for example, Sergei Lavrov's daughter lives in the West. Why is that allowed? There have been assets that have been sequestered but have not been liquidated, and they should be provided to that. I think that ultimately Russia needs to be defeated on the battlefield, and that requires a major step up in American and Western commitment towards Ukraine. Doing this incrementally just allows the Russians to adjust. There are signs of stress in Russia, and this may reflect that. This may be, the last-minute surge before the Russian rail and electricity infrastructure collapses, but it's still dangerous.
David Roches from the National Defence University, thanks so much for your time and analysis.